Hey, Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7. We're at episode number 1572, and today we're talking about more details about Star Wars Resistance thanks to 4 new episode descriptions that have come out. That means that we have a total of 9 episodic descriptions so far, bringing us all the way through the end of November. Based on the fact that there are 22 episodes in this first season, there is a good chance that there will be 2 more episodes beyond this in 2018, probably the first 2 weeks of December, and then they'll go on some sort of holiday break. So we probably will get 11 episodes before the end of the year in total. That's, of course, including the initial episode, The Recruit, as counting for 2 episodes. But right now we have 6, 7, 8, and 9, and even the one-liner descriptions are illuminating in their fashion. First of all, we have episode 6 coming up in November called The Children from Tehar, T-E-H-A-R. And in case you're wondering, nope, first reference, there is no other reference to a planet called Tehar, assuming that that is a planet. The description says that Kaz is searching for 2 missing children for a sizable reward, only to discover the First Order is also hunting them, and apparently we will see the return of Captain Phasma, played by Gwendoline Christie, in this episode. And, the First Order hunting down children, well, to some degree that's not too much of a surprise because we know that that's what they do. They snatch up children to indoctrinate them into the First Order and turn them into stormtroopers. But why 2 particular children? Well, one of the interesting things that we've never explored or talked about is whether the First Order cares at all about Force-sensitive children. Certainly, it doesn't seem that way. We've been given no indication that that's the case, but you have to wonder if at some point Kylo Ren is thinking about things like that and whether that has anything to do with the Knights of Ren at all. So I hope to see something Force-sensitive come up in conversation about this. Granted, we talked about Resistance being a series where we get to see the Star Wars galaxy operating without Force-sensitive people. So, that's kind of, sort of, the way in which a lot of Star Wars stories seem to be being told these days, or at least upcoming stories are going to be told. But be that as it may, I'd be curious to see how the First Order is dealing with any Force-sensitive children that they might come across. Next up, we have Signal from Sector 6. That's going to be episode 7, and it says, when out on a routine training exercise, a distress signal sends Kaz and Poe to a damaged ship with strange life forms aboard. Now, the reason why this is kind of instructive, number one, is the fact that we're avoiding right away what one of the initial weaknesses with Star Trek Deep Space Nine was, and we talked about comparisons between Resistance and Deep Space Nine earlier on in the run-up to the release of Resistance. But the idea that when you're locked on this space station, it really kind of limits your scope for the stories that you can tell. But getting Kaz out of the space station, well, now we've got an opportunity to tell some different stories. And it also opens up the idea of, how often is Kaz going to go back and forth from the Colossus, and how often is Poe going to show up on this thing, and how famous is Poe really, for that matter? I mean, just based on how highly Poe thinks of himself, to be perfectly honest, and also probably how highly we're meant to think of Poe. Does his reputation precede him to some degree? I would think it shouldn't, because if he shows up on the Colossus and drops off a kid, then why wouldn't his presence be remarkable, and therefore why wouldn't that make the whole spy game thing already a moot point? I don't know. I guess Poe isn't necessarily as well known around the galaxy as people might like to think, or maybe as he likes to think. Anyway, Oscar Isaac will be showing up for this episode as well. And the other notable thing is that as far as Sector 6 goes, well, that doesn't necessarily indicate something specifically that we've seen before. There was a reference to a Sector 6 in a Clone Wars episode that actually had references to wild space. So that in itself is intriguing, but really the notion of a Sector 6 has to be something that is held by lots of people, lots of different species, for lots of different circumstances. So it seems like we can't necessarily put too much into this one. There is the wild space coincidence, as well as the fact that, according to Wikipedia, there's a reference to a Sector 6 in the Poe Dameron's flight log book that was released by Studio Fun back in 2016. So really, Interesting coincidence, so we'll have to see if anything pans out from that. In fact, I may have to go track down a copy of Poe Dameron's flight log and see what that's all about. The next episode is going to be Sonara's Score, and we have this description. On a mission to repair a vital platform defense, Kaz befriends the mysterious Sonara and comes under attack by pirates. Now, Sonara is a character who appeared very briefly in the episode The Triple Dark, where pirates staged an attack on the Colossus, and Sonara is, in fact, one of those pirates associated with Craig and Gore. So it remains to be seen what this is about, but once again, Kaz is apparently about to get played by a pirate or pirate conspirator. And finally, we have the platform classic, that's episode 9. An upcoming race reunites Yeager with his estranged brother Marcus, who needs to win to pay off his debt to a criminal organization. And right now, as far as criminal organizations go, well, everything has seemed small time so far, but some sharp-eyed observer pointed out somewhere that there is a Black Sun logo that appears somewhere in Star Wars Resistance already, that it showed up either in the recruiter in the trailer. I'm hard-pressed to remember where, but Black Sun has been referenced, if by, iconic image only, in the show. So that criminal organization, could it be Black Sun? Seems like a potentially likely possibility based on the fact that we've already seen some evidence of their appearance so far. One open question this leaves us with, though, is whether this race is actually taking place on Castellon, or if there's a race in, say, a nearby system, for example. If it's a race on Castellon, then that's kind of interesting in its own right, because that means that it isn't just the 5 aces of the platform keeping busy and keeping from being bored by racing each other. No, that there's actual, other races that happen on Castellon, and that makes it more of a destination, and also then potentially brings more interesting elements into play in the series too, because that means that it isn't just out in the middle of nowhere and barely trafficked aside from the population that's there on the platform itself. So we have some interesting possibilities coming up in the next 4 episodes. Not necessarily the next 4 episodes. We've got one other before these 4 episodes come, and that's the High Tower. But for now, that's going to be our look at upcoming Star Wars Resistance episodes, and also that's going to be it for this episode of the podcast. I hope you will consider subscribing to the show, so that way you get the next one and the next one right to you, delivered without you having to even think about it. And also, I hope you will support this one-man enterprise here by supporting the show at Patreon. That's at patreon.com/SW7x7. For now, though, it just remains for me to say, thank you so much for joining me for this episode, and may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
This podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2018 Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it!